The fire stopping contained the fire. It allowed more time to vacate the building.
People don't think much about fire stopping, but I'll tell you, when you've been there, it's really needed.
The fire stopping gave us extra time so we could all get out of the building.
Whenever I'm in buildings now, I always check that the holes are stopped.
Hello. Dramatic scenes, I'm sure you'll agree, and ones that you've probably seen many times on television news programs. The common factor here is these were all BT buildings, just like the one you're in now. Imagine you were in this building when a fire broke out. It's essential that your escape route is defined and protected. So all buildings have design features which allow for a safe means of escape. For example, protected routes where walls and floors prevent the spread of fire, smoke and fumes. However, there are times when we need to penetrate this protection. In BT operational buildings, cable holes and risers breach walls and floors to allow for access for network services and power feeds. These cable holes and risers have to be fire stopped to maintain the protective integrity of these routes. Recently, changes have been made as to how we fire stop. There is now a mandatory control procedure which must be followed. This procedure is overseen by the cable hole management team, who have a database of all cable holes and risers in BT buildings. The group also issue permit to access notices, which are now needed before any work can commence in cable holes. They also receive closure notifications, allowing them to track what work has been done, when, and by whom. In this video, we'll outline this mandatory procedure, the new materials for making closures, the fire stopping method, and the closure notification. So, why is there a mandatory procedure including a permit to access? Well, first of all, there are some 6,500 operational buildings within BT UK, which means approximately 150,000 cable holes. Well, clearly, we need to have some kind of control, hence the formation of the cable hole management team. Also, BT has a legal obligation to ensure, as far as is reasonably practicable, safe access and egress to and from any place of work. But having established the need to provide and maintain our protected routes, consideration must also be given to any other hazards associated with fire stopping, in particular asbestos contamination. Some old fire stopping materials were asbestos based. In buildings that have been surveyed, you will encounter these mandatory labels adjacent to fire-stopped closures. If you have some work that necessitates access through cable holes, it is important that authority to access is obtained prior to any work commencing in these buildings. Well, this can be done by the planning group completing the relevant form prior to the work allocation, completing the form yourself when you receive the work, or contacting the cable hole management team on the 0800 number stated on the blue label to request a form. When completing the form, you will need to include the hole identification and the hole barcode. All the forms and documents are listed in the briefing pack which accompanies this video. Once processed, the cable hole management team will return the form advising whether access is authorized or refused. In the case of a refusal, discussion should take place directly with the team via the 0800 number. However, when authority has been obtained, remember to proceed with caution at all times. Now let's take a look at the tools, equipment and materials you'll need. Because the work will create dust, personal protection items such as overalls disposable, respirators 3A, and disposable gloves are required. Well, these latex gloves are suitable and can be purchased locally. The only item that may not be part of your existing kit is this, an ordinary bread knife, which can also be purchased locally. Ensure it has a scalloped edge. It's also a good idea to make a suitable sheath for it. Now, the material. A new product has been introduced for the majority of cable holes, Firestopping board number 3. Now, this board differs from its predecessors by being non-fibrous. Nevertheless, it does create dust. A full list of materials and stores items is included in the appendices to the Firestopping ISIS document. Before any work can commence, carry out an on-site risk assessment. Right, we're just about ready to begin work. First of all, it's important to cover any equipment and the surrounding areas with cotton dust sheets. You can make the job a lot easier by erecting a suitable working platform. We're using step ladders, but where access is limited, you may only be able to use a wooden ladder. Before the cable hole can be fire stopped, it should be completely clear of any loose fire stopping material or dirt. Now, this can be done by using a vacuum cleaner. To make the final job easier, it will be helpful if you first install battens around the inside of the hole. Their use will become clearer in a moment. First, measure the hole. The battens need to be the same depth as the thickness of the board. This is usually 60 millimeters, but it should be checked. Now, cut the battens and fix them into position. Next, we must decide how best to cut the board. To fire stop this hole, we've decided we need 2 pieces. One of the advantages of fire stopping board number 3 is that it can be easily cut to fit into any existing cable hole. Let's measure our first piece. Mark the board accurately. Now we're ready to cut the board. Remember, only use the bread knife. No power saws or wood saws should be used. A good tip is to support the board. Here we're using a bench portable. Before we check that the piece fits, coat all the edges with a mixture of compound and water. This minimizes the release of dust. The board can now be offered up to the hole to check the fit. This is important. If the board is oversized, it will not compress. Now we need the cartridge gun. Coat all the surfaces the board will touch with fire-stopping compound number 1. Now we can insert the piece. Push it firmly into place so it's flush with the hole surround. On the second piece, it is important to apply compound to those surfaces of the board which are going to come into contact with each other. Insert the piece of board into place, pushing it firmly until it makes contact with the battens. Insert any filler pieces required, then apply further compound to all joints and around the wood liner. The compound should be applied to a depth of 3 millimeters and be smoothed off with your scraper. This will ensure a good fireproof seal. To produce a presentable finish, brush with the water and compound mixture, and not forgetting the wooden frame. As a final check, inspect the fire stopping from the other side to ensure no gaps have been left. Seal as before if required. But for walls with a thickness greater than 120 millimeters, it will be necessary to repeat the whole procedure from the other side. Now, there we are, a job well done. All that's needed now is to thoroughly tidy up. Pick up any large pieces and place them in a plastic sack. Remove dust sheets, making sure to fold all corners into the center. And vacuum the working area. Finally, wash your hands and arms with soap and water. And that completes the job. What you've just seen are all the necessary steps to fire stop a cable hole. Well, next, we're going to add cables to an existing fire-stopped hole. The first step is to estimate how much space the new cables will occupy and where they will lay on the runway. The board should then be marked. Using the bread knife, carefully ease it through the board and cut round the marked area in a wedge shape. This is necessary to ensure that the piece can be easily removed. Once the new cables have been added, you'll need to trim the piece to fill the remaining space. Holes that are situated between floors are fire stopped with one piece of board fixed at the bottom of the hole, flush with the ceiling. In addition, a wooden safety cover is fitted to the top of the hole. Existing wooden covers may need to be trimmed and refitted following the addition of cables. Remember, when work is in progress and the wooden cover is not in place, The hole must be adequately guarded. Cable pots which penetrate the floor below distribution frames may be sealed using compound number 1 or with fire-stopping bags. These bags come in various sizes and should be packed firmly into spaces around and between cables using a blunt object, such as a hammer handle. Don't use a sharp object, such as a screwdriver. It may damage the fire-stopping bags, the cables, or the lining. Some cable pots are lined with asbestos, so great care must be taken. Right. That completes our look at the procedures and methods. Well, almost. We must send off our notification of closure. This uses the same authority to access form that we receive back from the cable hole management team. We simply sign it off and return it. So, to briefly recap, before any cable hole can be accessed, prior authority is required from the cable hole management team. When authority is received, then work may commence. The hole can then be fire-stopped, made safe, and the site cleaned and tidied. Finally, a closure of notification is sent off. A detailed explanation on how to fire-stop a variety of cable holes is given in the current ISIS document. Remember, fire-stopping a cable hole is not only a legal requirement, but safeguards your means of escape in the event of a fire. This could help save your own life, as well as your colleagues. Thanks for watching.